Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, this is Rich McDonald, and I play Commander David Mason on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
It's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Plo Koon in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Everything Geek, the podcast.
Hey, it's Leif Gaffert. I played Uncle Ben's killer in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldavar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
You're listening to the Everything Geek podcast, bringing you interviews from your favorite films and TV shows every week, and all of the latest news. Here's your host, Ruari Williamson.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Ruari, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have Eric MacLennan, best known for playing Tenzigo Weems in Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, Matvey and Anna Karenina, Doctor in Tale of Tales, Henchman in Urban Ghost Story, Ghost of Past Deliveries, Prince Erik, Stinky Pete and Andy, and Hububb and Alfred and the Night Manager. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well indeed, and it's a delight to be talking with you using this modern technology.
Yeah, technology, it just gets more and more fascinating, that's for sure, and we can talk to people in other countries for free, and not many people could do that in, generations past. Yeah,
no, it's kind of interesting, because I'm old enough to remember the telephone box, and that's already ancient history. And it's kind of funny. You start talking to people about things, and you have to be careful. You might say the word typewriter, and then you have to explain what this machine is. So, but I'm trying to keep pace with the modern world. So it's a delight to be doing this conversation with you using these wonderful machines.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Getting right into my questions for you, Eric. For some of our listeners who may not be familiar with your background, can you tell us how you got into acting originally?
Yes, of course. For a lot of people, in whatever walk of life, people will refer to a good teacher, someone who inspires them. And I'm no exception to that. There was a very good drama teacher, and I was suddenly, that world was opened up to me. I have to say that I came into acting really by accident. I wasn't doing very well academically with A levels, and so I went to a sixth form college and started doing arts A levels. And they said to me, "That's fine." I was doing RE, sociology, and English. And they said, "That's fine. You don't need another O level, but you need to be in college a certain number of hours. So can you just pick another O level?" And I looked down a list and I saw the word drama, and I thought, "Oh, that'll be easy. I'm not really interested in it, but it'll fill up the timetable." And they went, "Well, you've picked that. Actually, that's not an O level. It's an OA level." And I said, "Okay, I'll do that anyway." I started doing it for a couple of weeks, and they said, "There's a pilot scheme to do theatre studies, A level. You're virtually doing that work already, so you might as well convert." And as I say, there was an inspiring teacher, and that A level then became the subject that I was most interested in. I then went off to Warwick University, studied theatre there, and then after that I studied movement and theatre in Paris and got into performing that way. So it was quite a late discovery for me, but a teacher, a man called Jeremy Siddle, and a man called Frank Hooper, they were two wonderful drama teachers, and they got me started, really. Sorry, that's a rambling answer.
No, it's a fantastic answer. Like, I really like how, because that's kind of the thing with in life, isn't it? Like, I mean, one decision can change everything. Like, you could have decided to do something else other than drama studies, and then that seems to have been very different for you, but all because you decided to put it down just to fill up the timetable. We're now here talking.
So I suppose the lesson there is, be careful whatever decisions you make, because you might think I'm making a small decision today, but that could be one of life's crossroads. And it's really interesting to see how life develops in that way. That it's a series of choices and coincidences and accidents. So I'm very grateful that happened, but it was by no means planned, as it were.
For sure. Can you tell us how you were originally cast in Rogue One, a Star Wars story?
Yes, of course. I mean, quite often these days, when you're auditioning, we're now asked to provide self-tapes, and that's a sort of standard thing now. You don't have an audition, a traditional audition where you have a meeting and you meet the director or someone, or casting director. But however, in this case, I made a film with Joe Wright, Anna Karenina, that you referred to, and the casting director on that, the company called Gina J, and they were casting Rogue One, and they put me forward, and they're then putting me forward with excerpts from a previous film. And so through the confidence in the filmmaker's assessment of the casting director, I was directly offered work. So there was no audition as such, which is perhaps unusual. But I was just asked to be in this film. And then, of course, very quickly, I was told that I couldn't tell anybody about it or even say what it was called. And from the very beginning, it had a code name, Los Alamos. And even when I started working on the film, if a driver would come, he would say it's Los Alamos, and you weren't allowed to tell your family. And so but the whole journey started with Gina J's office, who are wonderful, loyal people. And there are several people, Alistair Petrie, who's in the film, who I know from The Night Manager. We both found that we've been very nicely remembered by Gina J. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the secrecy, and of course, as Star Wars fans, we all know about the intense secrecy on the films. And you mentioned you couldn't even tell your family. When exactly could you tell them? Like, how long did you have to wait? Was it until the film had come out?
Yes, well, you're not supposed to say anything at all, and quite an unusual thing is that you're not allowed to see script in advance. So on a day when you're filming, you would go out, you'd be in your trailer, and at 6 a.m, you would see the dialogue, and you would start learning it, and you'd be learning it till lunchtime. And then you'd get on the set, and you would just about have all those difficult words that were having trouble to pronounce. And you'd get on the set, and they'd say, "Oh, don't we've changed the script," and you'd have something slightly different to say. So all of that was very exciting. And even when I went to see the film, there was a cast and crew screening. And there it was like going through airport security. People had to check in electronic devices, and people were reminded that under no circumstances were people allowed to record anything they were seeing or to talk about it or anything. And this was just days before it was released. So right up until the release point, you weren't allowed to say anything at all about it. So that was like being in a spy thriller or something. It was quite exciting, sort of knowing that you knew about something that was about to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Were you a fan of Star Wars before you were cast in the film?
Not particularly, to be honest. I do remember with great affection seeing the first film in '77, I think it was, and I have a young cousin who was down from Scotland on holiday and staying with us, and he had already seen it, and he wanted to see it again, and so I was kind of babysitting him and going along, and his excitement for the film was infectious, and in some ways he spoiled it for me, because he couldn't help but say, "Oh, this is about to happen." So all the way through the film there were spoilers. I was getting spoilers from my young cousin Kevin, but that introduced me to the world of that, and then of course very quickly, as we all know, its popularity was such that we were then surrounded by all sorts of toys and things about the movie, and the world was then fleshed out, and that was it was kind of exciting to see the thoroughness with which this world has been created. So I came to it quite slowly, but yes, I'd say I'm a fan now for sure.
That's really great. And did you ever tell your cousin that you had been that you were in Star Wars?
Well, it's kind of interesting because such is life, that everybody sees these films, and so it's been really enjoyable for me that I over the last year I've been getting messages for people I've not seen for 30 years, 40 years, who go along and they're watching the film, and then they drop their popcorn and they go, "It's Erik." So I've had people from all over the world at different points in my life getting back in contact with me, and so that's been very enjoyable. A lot of the work I do will be small pieces of experimental theatre that maybe if 200 people are there on the night, that's a lot. I mean, here we have something where millions of people are seeing it. So yeah, you're back in touch with everyone, which is nice.
Yeah, that's really great. What would you say were the biggest challenges you faced while working on the film?
I would say, I mean, to maybe repeating myself slightly, that the fact that because they didn't want anything leaked in advance of the release, the fact that you couldn't see the text from the script in advance, that was quite a big challenge, in the same way, that was that gave great excitement to being on set. I mean, the other thing I would say was a big challenge would be in one scene. There's a scene where I come running in with some news, and I had to go past about 200 extras. So when you go for a take there, there's 300 people in the studio, and you know that you have to get your timing absolutely spot on. So there is a similar rush of adrenaline, of nerves, to want to get it right, because there's the pressure with that number of people. But that's also quite exhilarating, and for me, that's quite similar to live performance in the theatre, where you're actually in front of the audience. You've got to get it right, and it might go wrong. I mean, sometimes making a film, it can be slightly more relaxed because you can do another take. But if there's a lot of people on set, I thought that was one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because it is a small scene in the film when you see it, when you see it on the big screen, but like it totally makes a lot of sense. Like I remember when I was watching Rogue One for the first time myself, I was like, that guy had to run through a lot of people just there. I mean, no one else would really think about that, but I'm just like, it looks like it would be so easy to get it wrong. So, I mean, did you have to do another take, or did you just get it in the one take?
Well, we did several takes of that, and there's a slightly longer sequence into that has a run from a different angle, and in that one it was the crowd scenes were choreographed with a stand-in, and then I came in and went for the take, and I was able just to push through and zigzag through crowds that were marching towards me, and that was essentially shall we say, an 80-meter sprint. It wasn't coming downstairs. It was before that section on the flat, and Gareth wanted to get with different cameras. We maybe had about 15 goes at that. And so I'm fairly fit, but I would do the sprint, and then you'd get the bell, reset, and I'd have to walk back pretty quick, get my breath together. There'd be water, makeup, and then off again. So I did 15 sprints in the space of an afternoon, and I noticed the following day my muscles were quite stiff.
I'd imagine so. I mean, that is a quite a good number of takes, like 15 of them. I was expecting maybe a few, but 15. I mean, they do want to be very thorough on the set of a big film.
Yeah, and I think there are things where there are just people crossing over, and they start finding something. Oh, that's quite interesting. We hadn't planned to make it look like this, but now that we've got that crossover, let's rehearse that. So it's not necessarily that the take is not satisfactory. It's that it reveals a better way of playing the scene, and the director says, "Oh, it's great. We've discovered this. Now let's keep this and add something else." So quite often they have the luxury to have the extra takes, and they will enjoy developing the work as they go.
Absolutely. What would you say was your favorite memory from your time working on the film?
Well, I have two things. One was the Yavin 4 was all shot in a place in Bedfordshire in Cardington Sheds, which are these amazing. They're often used for studios now for big films, and they're film sets. They're not soundproof, but they're the same sort of size as stuff in Hollywood, and you can see them on the horizon as you arrive a few miles away. They were made for making some of the big airships at the beginning of the 20th century, and they're quite awe-inspiring. They're just huge structures. And the other favorite memory I would offer would be you work on this film, and it's over a long period of time, and you don't know whether you're going to end up in the final cut or not. And in the October before the release, I had a message asking if I could come in and do some ADR, some additional dialogue recording. And I thought, if they want to add in some extra voice or redo some voice, that means there's a fair chance I'm in it. And so they said, "Can you get over to a studio in Soho?" And I said, "Yeah." And then we rearranged the time. And then I realised it was one of the screenwriters, Tony Gilroy, who had been doing some writing and doing some second unit shooting, and he was directing my additional dialogue from Hollywood. So he came on like you are now on Skype and directed me when I was doing this work, and that was quite thrilling to be doing some acting and your director is on the other side of the world. So that was that was quite an exciting hour.
Yeah, again, the wonders of technology.
Well, exactly.
How would you describe your overall experience working with the cast and crew of Rogue One?
Although it was a huge project, it really did have a sense of family, and I was very happy being part of the good guys, part of the Rebel Alliance, and one of the members of production made these kind of nice wristbands that had is it fight the Empire. So I'm very happy to have this band that's written in the kind of the correct language. That so you really did feel part of something rather than something that was just kind of amorphous. You felt that it was a closely knit community, albeit a very large one.
Yeah, for sure. That's really great. Now, which has been the most challenging role in your career so far? Can include theatre.
Well, that's sort of hard to answer. I mean, quite often it's the latest thing that you're doing, but I can remember doing. I used to do quite a lot of theatre work that would be in big outdoor festivals, and of course in Europe there's much more of that. And I remember doing a show. It was a Scottish company working with a French company, and I can speak reasonable French. And so when we played in France, I would play my scenes in French, and this would be all mic'd up in a big town square with maybe an audience of about between 2,000 and 4,000 people, and I would be there thinking, I hope these people, I'm going to be saying this scene in French, I hope they can understand. So that was that felt like the most challenging thing, because it felt like if that hadn't worked, they would have told me. But fortunately, it went fine.
Yeah, that's always the best thing. You know you've done a good job when no one criticizes you.
Yeah. No fruit or rotten vegetables were thrown.
Brilliant. Yeah, that is a very good indication. No one wants rotten fruit and veg thrown at them.
No. Yeah.
So, my final question for you, Eric. Do you have any upcoming acting roles or any other projects you would like to talk about?
Yes, I mentioned Joe Wright before, and I've recently finished working with him. He's made a very interesting and beautiful film about Winston Churchill, and is often the case now when there are these biopics, as they're called. They don't tell the whole life now. They distill it into a key week or 2 weeks that kind of tells the person's life story. So it's a kind of key point in the Second World War when it looks like they might lose the war. And Gary Oldman is playing Churchill, and I have the part of Tom Leonard, who is Churchill's chauffeur. So I got to drive this beautiful old Humber, and that was very enjoyable. And I've just recently finished. I've not really done much radio, but I've just finished recording with the writer and director Jonathan Holloway for radio for a version of The Scarlet Pimpernel, which I think might be out around Christmas time. And I have a big beard at the moment because I'm about to do a small part in a film about Mary Queen of Scots. So I'm looking forward to doing something in my native accent. This English accent is one I've acquired by living in England for a long time, but I was born in Scotland. So occasionally when I get a chance to act in a Scots voice, I find that's close to my heart and enjoyable, even though I've only got a couple of lines, I think, but I'll enjoy them. So yeah, those are the sort of things that are coming up at the moment. Yeah.
That's really exciting, and I'm really interested in history myself. It's one of my passions outside of podcasting. So that Winston Churchill film sounds great, and I think Gary Oldman is like the perfect casting for Churchill.
Yeah. He was Joe Wright. He used his parents ran a puppet theatre, and his roots are in theatre, and so he starts rehearsing very much as a theatre company would rehearse. And so unusually we had a read through with the whole cast there, and at the first read through, Gary Oldman's thoroughness in assuming the character was wonderful to witness. It'll be I think it'll be observed as one of his great performances, and of course he's produced many, but I think this one will be very well remembered.
Definitely, let's hope so. That's all of my questions for you today, Erik. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
Oh, likewise. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a delight. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
That would be great. I'd be very happy to. Thank you.
Definitely. Well, I look forward to talking to you again soon, Erik. Thanks for joining us, and take care. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Time to wrap up today's show. Make sure to check out our podcast links. Check out our website, website.everythinggeekpodcast.com/egp. Check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the following email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comiccast. www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the hosts' YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/septusdestroyers. Check out Eric MacLennan's website, www.ericmaclennan.com, and check out channel 1138 where we broadcast live from, www.channel1138.com. Geeks out, everyone.
Yeah, I mean they're very warm actually, and a lot of the time you're spending, especially when you're doing more of the background supporting roles, it's your job to kind of to fill in all the other parts of the film,
action scenes and fighting and stuff like that. So yeah, 20 people. So I was really lucky to get picked as one of the 6. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And unlike some people that worked on the film, it might not have been as